So here we are again on a Cruiser 420 Express, and we've recently installed a large battery bank, about 400 amp hours, L16s, wired in series to make a 12 volt battery bank. And it was really essential, and what I always recommend to owners is know where you are. You know, I think it's, especially with a battery bank, know what your depth of discharge is. And the only way of knowing that is really with a battery monitor. And a battery monitor is not just a voltmeter. Of course it gives you volts, but it also gives you other really pertinent information. And the two ones I really always recommend to people to look at is capacity, expressed as a percentage, so readily available and understandable. So a little bit in our cars, it's maybe fractions, you know, full, half full, three-quarter full, quarter full. But on here, they just show that as a percentage, so 50%, 70%, 25%. And then the other thing too is it shows you amps in and out. And this here actually, the meter, actually the shunt is close to the engine, the house bank, but what the user is going to be, or the boater is going to be checking, is actually right here at the battery monitor. And the battery monitor on this boat is a Victron Battery Monitor. And right now, the first thing you'll notice is it's a little bit dark, and that's a way for the screen not to burn out. So you can press any button and you're not really going to change what you're seeing, you're just kind of waking it up. So I press a button, and here we see that we're looking at percentage. And you can see actually it says 100%, meaning the house batteries are currently full. And that makes sense because we're actually right now charging the batteries because we're connected to shore power. And we can actually see that here on the Victron. AC mains are on, and we're on the charger mode, inverter charger mode on. So we've got 100% capacity. And with AGM batteries, you can obviously, like, they're all lead acid batteries, but depending on the make, you can compromise a little bit and bring your batteries down to obviously 50% and sometimes even 30%. And so as an owner, you want to kind of make sure that you don't ever go below 30%, especially with these AGM batteries. 50 is probably preferable, but you can do it sometimes. And then know when it's time to actually to start the generator, run the engine, or however you need to actually get the batteries recharged. Because there's a big sacrifice that happens when you bring your batteries down to 0 or 10.5 volts. You know, capacity or complete discharge of the battery is going to affect the number of cycles. So batteries are a play between two variables. How many times can you use them, and what's the depth of discharge? And so the deeper the depth of discharge, the least amount of cycles you're going to be able to use. So a good compromise is around 50% or 30% on some AGM makes. So the next thing that's really useful in a battery monitor, which I really like, is seeing the amps. So here on this Victron battery monitor, you just simply press the down arrow, and then eventually we're going to get to amps. And you can see a little A right here. And amps can either be positive or negative. Negative amps means you're drawing from the batteries. Positive amp means you're charging. And that's really good as a way to kind of figure out if you're using too much power, and also to extrapolate and figure out how long can you stay an anchor. Because if you're on your boat and you're suddenly using, 40 amps, why are you using 40 amps on this size boat? What's on? Maybe you left your radar on. Maybe your TV is on, or maybe you've left the coffee pot on and your inverter's on. It's really important to be able to gauge what's being drawn from the batteries, and the amps tells you that. It's like a speedometer in a car. How fast are you going? If you're in a school zone, you've got to be looking at your speedometer to know that you're not going over 20 kilometers an hour or 30 kilometers an hour. And it's the same thing with the amps. If you're about to call it for a night, why are you drawing 30 amps on a boat like this? All the lights should be off. Pretty much the only thing that should be on is your fridge and maybe some lights, an anchor light, maybe the chart plotter if you're looking at your location, but you should have very limited loads. And so amps is a really good way of assessing what your loads are, but also figuring out what your charge rate is. How many amps are you getting when you're running your engines? On this specific boat, he has a diode combiner, from the alternator. So he's going to have limited output. Figure out, okay, look, I'm recharging right now, but I'm not recharging that much. So I got to run my engines for longer to get my batteries charged. And so that's a way for them to know the speed at which they're recharging their batteries. And that's really useful.